Welcome to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
Well, hey everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 526 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll be brief, getting right to it. Today I am welcoming Larry Mullins, drummer and musician for many bands you likely have in your record collection. Earlier this year, I was privileged to see him play with Swans. Next year, I'll see him tour with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And by golly, Larry used to be a Stooge. He used to play with Iggy Pop for many years in the 90s, and he was playing with the Stooges after Scott Ashton got too sick to play in the 2010s. So today, he and I gush very heavy towards our favorite band and their formidable records that serve several spots on the Mount Rushmore of iconic albums. Today, he and I go deep into the Stooges, and he's even taken it a step further, making tribute releases with a Mr. Mike Watt and putting them out for Record Store Day. So, if you're going to go to the record shops on Record Store Day Black Friday, and I know you are, if you see a copy of Larry Mullins and Mike Watt, We Will Fall, grab it. Damn it. There aren't very many, like 1,000 worldwide, and that's it. It's a 40-minute version of the Stooges track We Will Fall, guaranteed to sound unlike anything else you will buy that day and probably in your record collection. Today and on Record Store Day, let's celebrate independent record stores and pioneering artists like the Stooges and Larry Mullins and Mike Watt. We Will Fall, RSD release. Don't miss it. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here we go, the conversation with Larry Mullins, all about his time, memory, and love for the Stooges. All right, we are live with Mr. Larry Mullins. Maybe we'll get a special guest later. We'll see. But we're going to be talking about the Stooges, and especially in light of the We Will Fall record for Record Store Day. 40 minutes of We Will Fall, and this is another in the series of Stooges covers, homages that you guys have been doing over the past few years.
Yes, it's quite a project we've come up with.
Yeah. What was the origin? What was the origin of that?
It was actually Mike's idea. He wanted to. He really, when Stooges shut down after Steve died, Mike, he just got a bee in his bonnet that he wanted to make some kind of sort of tribute project to the band, just me and him, and so that entailed no singer, so it's like, but so we talked it over, and he was like, he just wanted to do live takes, really super aggressive live takes of just me and him, and using bass to sort of represent the lead vocal parts and the whatever, and I go to California pretty often, so he has a place to record in San Pedro, and so we just started doing it, and his idea was to do these long versions, like 8-9 minute live take versions of these Stooges songs, and that's a pretty intense thing to try to do with some of these songs, to actually whip them out for 9 minutes. But that's the way we started doing it, and we've just been releasing the songs on 7-inch records, and so we mix them so that they fade out on side A and they fade back up on side B, and but it's one live take. So the idea was that we would do a multitude of songs that way, like a series, and then at the end we'll release them as like a double LP with the full versions without the fade out and fade in.
Okay, so right now a lot of those first songs, TVI, 69, 70, those are only available on the 7-inch.
Only on 7-inch, and they're not online as far as I know.
Yeah, no one's even bootlegged them, throwing them on
No,
YouTube. You can't hear them anywhere.
just on the 7 inches. I mean, that's the way we wanted to try to keep it, and it's been successful so far. But yeah, we did Funhouse. But yeah, those were hard to do, and so we did all that stuff, and then and then the pandemic happened, and suddenly I wasn't able to. We recorded 2 of the songs directly, like the week before everything got closed in the United States. I flew out of LA back over here the night before Trump closed all the European flights and all that stuff. So so we had 2 songs to work on mix wise during the pandemic anyway, and then we didn't know how long that nonsense was going to go on, and so I told. I think we had even discussed. We'd talked about. We'd been rummaging through the songs, and I think we had just discarded "We Will Fall" right away because there's no drums on it, So we're like, well, obviously we don't need that. But then I went back to it and I told Mike. I said, look, maybe we should do "We Will Fall" because there are no drums, and I could build the track up with a lot of stuff here in Berlin with the chants and all that stuff, and a drone, big drone kind of thing, and and then he could overdub his stuff in San Pedro, and we actually could put that together. But in the end, it all opened up, and I was able to go back over to San Pedro, and Mike and I sang the chant live together, and we recorded that. So, but it was quite a pretty psychedelic experience. I didn't realize what we were getting into because I told him, because I had a friend. I've got a friend who's a mastering engineer in Burbank, and he was involved. I didn't know it, but he has a mastering studio that specializes in odd tape formats, and he does transfers for people who want to bake tapes and get demos and things off of weird whatever cassette or 8-track or whatever, like every possible weird format. He's got the machines there to make digital transfers, and so he also works a lot for Rhino and a lot of the labels that are doing these expanded reissue things with all these old demos, unreleased things that people had in their kitchen or whatever. And so I went out to visit him and see his studio some years ago, and I hadn't seen him for a while. And when he saw me, he was just thinking, oh yeah, Iggy and the Stooges. And he just started talking about, he was the guy who did the transfers for the Rhino reissues of the Stooges records, of the first record and the Raw Power record, which were done in these sort of 7-inch boxes.
Yep.
Did you see those? And then also the Funhouse box with the giant Funhouse box. So he was.
I got that right there.
So his name's Brian Kehew, and he did all those transfers, and then we got to talking about it, because I bought all those things and listened to all that stuff, and we were going into it. And he was like, "Yeah, it's so weird. Like when we got the master tapes from the first album." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, we popped it all. We got them all up there, and then like all the songs were like 15 minutes long, or 12 minutes long." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, it's like the original. The takes were long." I'm like, you got to be kidding, because they did not issue that in that reissue package. It's just the original. It's the album with I think there's a single, or there's a couple of single mixes or something, but there's no.
I guess that most of them fade out. So yeah, I suppose
they
that
all
could happen.
Fade out. If you listen to the record, they fade out, and then I realized. So John Cale, so I know some stories because I saw John Cale give a lecture some years ago in Oslo. I was there. He was brought in as like a, it was like a festival, sort of a South by Southwest kind of festival. but it's for Scandinavia, and they bring in people and they give these seminars. What do they call them? Keynote speakers or whatever. And so John was there. And so a lot of my friends were super excited to go see John Cale do this. And I'm like, well, John, I don't know. I don't know if that's really going to be that great. He's known for being really difficult and snappy and cantankerous and just sort of like, it could really be a bummer, So I wasn't excited to go, but I went anyway because a lot of my friends were there. So I went and we were all set up. And then, so it's this interviewer and John sitting in two chairs. And the thing that kicked it off was the guy who did the interview was loaded and ready to fire these questions. That guy had done his homework and he knew he had John for 1 hour, and he had crafted out a strategy of to get the best questions, And so I was just standing there thinking, God, what's this? What are they going to talk about? Lou Reed or what? And first question, let's talk about the first Stooges record, the recording of the first Stooges record in New York City. And I was like, oh my God. It suddenly dawned on me because, okay, so the Ashton brothers had passed away, right? And of course, Dave Alexander passed away. Iggy really doesn't remember much from the sessions because he was high. And, so he has a very selective, minimal memory of really what happened. There's a lot of photography from the sessions where you can kind of get an idea of what they were doing and what it looked like and, how they were. But so it dawned on me, immediately I realized, oh my God, John Cale is the only person alive on earth who can tell stories about those sessions. And they proceeded to talk. They spent the first 15 minutes just talking about those sessions. And my jaw just hit the floor. I was standing there like I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And but he was really calm and I think he was kind of surprised by that first question. Nothing about the Velvet Underground, just right there. 15 minutes on that. And then the next question was, let's talk about the recording of the Marble Index and how did you put that together? It was just super interesting the whole hour. I don't think they even talked about the Velvet Underground, and it was just like, I was just blown away. And John was super cooperative, I think, because the questions were totally interesting. And it was a unique interview, really fantastic. So based on what I had heard him talk about the sessions, I realized when my friend Brian had told me, yeah, all the songs are really long. The takes are really long. They just, they edited, John chopped the songs up and faded them out and turned them into those, what we know as I Want to Be Your Dog and No Fun and all that stuff. So I told Mike, did you know that what we're doing, these 9-minute versions, it's not so crazy after all, because that's the way they did it. It's just nobody knew. Because they showed up in New York and they didn't have any songs. You know that?
Yeah, they wrote most of them like the day before.
The night they had rooms in the Chelsea Hotel. Because prior to that, they were just like a wild improvisational jam, psychedelic jam band, wild, with Iggy running around. And, it was just, you never knew what you were going to get on a show. It was really wild. And so when they came in to make this record, they had to have some songs.
Structure.
They had to get their act together, and so they would stay up at night and come up with these riffs, pretty simple, but they'd come up with these riffs and Iggy would write lyrics and then they'd go in the studio the next morning with that song and try to work it out. So they'd work it out and then they'd get it kind of figured out and then they'd roll tape and they would just jam that song for the whole length of a reel of tape, which is between 12 and 15 minutes or so. Mm-hmm. And then I guess John went through it, figured out the bad stuff, chopped it out, put it together, and faded it out. And so the songs are short.
So are there any recordings, any availabilities, any place we could listen to those long versions?
Well, I know that they exist. So, and I freaked out, because I asked Brian, I said, did you make a backup?
Can you slip me some MP3s?
And I said, did you make a backup? And he said, yeah. I said, can you find it? Is it on a hard drive here somewhere? He's like, yeah, it's in here somewhere. So he pulled out some boxes and started digging around. And I was like, blah, 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 and he finally found it and popped it up, and we opened the folder. And I was like, oh my God, you could see the links. I'm like, why didn't they release this? This is what everybody wants to hear. Anyway, so yeah, and We Will Fall is long. It's 15 minutes long or something like that. I think on the album it's 9 minutes or something, they faded out. But, and I guess the story, I don't know if you know the story of We Will Fall, but because of, John had been editing this stuff down, and, they had the good mixes of the songs, but they needed more material to finish the 30-minute record. And so Dave, they were trying to come up with an idea. What else can we do? We need something kind of long. And Dave had been wandering around Manhattan and had passed a Hare Krishna center, and they didn't have any money, and so he knew that you could go in there and get free food, right? So he went in there and got food. And of course they were chanting. So the thing that they were chanting that morning was that. The O Shri Ramja Ramjaja Ram. They were chanting that. And he sang that. And I think he wrote it down and brought it in. He goes, hey, I got this idea. We could all do this chant, And, we could do it for as long as possible. And John can finish out the LP. He can clip it to exactly how much time we need. And that's what they did. They put that together. From Dave getting some free Hare Krishna, curry or something.
Pulling inspiration from everywhere.
Yeah, and so I told Mike, I'm like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to but we're going to go even further than that. And why don't we do a really long one, a full LP one, a full LP version. And so that's what we agreed to do. But I didn't realize what we were actually getting into because every take is 45 minutes. So a day goes by real quick, like a session. Just to overdub one thing is another. So we did it all, the takes are all live. There's no looping or anything like that. So it's a 45-minute take of that note, another 45-minute take of that note, and building up this harmonic drone, and then come the chants. And I gotta say, weird stuff starts to happen when you actually sing that chant. I've heard the record all my life. I remember the song, and maybe I chanted along to it a little bit, but not seriously. But when we were going to record it, I was really serious about it, and the pacing and the phrasing and the tempo and everything like that, and it's very slow. And this goes on for 45 minutes. It's so funny, because I wanted to stack up a lot of voices, and that's a lot of air. That's a lot of air you're pushing out of your body. 45 minutes.
What does that chant translate to?
Well, I can tell you, it's a celebration of a war. It's a war chant. It's a victory chant. And it's praising Ram, the god Ram, and it's praising a victory of a battle. And so a Hindu, it's a Hindu chant. And I studied the whole thing a lot and sent all this stuff to Mike. I'm like, look, you got to know what we're getting into. This is going to be really,
we may awaken something.
Yeah, and but it's so funny. My engineer here, Ingo Kraus, I think when we got to the fourth or fifth vocal take, I was singing through it. It was late at night. We were drinking red wine, and I was singing through it. And at one point, he was sitting in the control room, and just suddenly there was no more signal. Like, he didn't know if I was pausing or something, and then some time went by, and then all of a sudden he heard me snoring. And I sang myself to sleep. I actually sang myself to sleep and just went to sleep there in front of the microphone. He came in there and shook my shoulder. He was laughing his ass off, like that I'd actually like sang myself into dream world. But
it is a very soothing kind of thing. So I can see where that would kind of lull someone to total comfort.
Well, by the time you're on your fifth take, that's 5 hours of that.
And a bottle of wine doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Anyway, so I went. I did mine, the lower ones, and then I went to San Pedro, and then we went back in the studio, and then Mike and I did the chants together, sitting with each other. I think we did 3, and then that was about all we could do. But it really came out wild, and I'm really happy with it. It's super psychedelic, just like we wanted it to be, and it's not hysterical or anything. We tried to keep it very spacious and whatever, transcendental or whatever. But inevitably, with a 40-minute version of that, it slowly builds up to a peak of heavy psychedelic. What the hell's going on? But yeah, it's been a fun project doing these songs with Mike.
So you've heard these longer versions. Did they inspire the versions you guys did, or was it just a similar thought in different decades?
No, the first ones we had already done, and when I saw the links of those takes, I realized like, oh wow, it was not crazy for us to try to do that. We just didn't know that is the way. They had done 8-9 minute versions of that. There's a 9-minute version of "I Want to Be Your Dog" out there somewhere. So yeah. Anyway, so that but what I realized that was when I really got the inspiration to do the "We Will Fall," because I realized, that's something that has never been done. There have been, of course, people have covered "I Want to Be Your Dog." We didn't do that, but people have done cover versions of Stooges songs before, but no one ever messed around with that. That one's too weird. And yeah, who wants to mess around with that? And so we did. We messed around with that big time. But I said, if we really want to do something significant, we'll do a really, really super long version, like almost like an Alice Coltrane, gathering, like a ceremonial,
So is the plan to do the rest of the songs on those first albums?
As far as I know, I think this will be the last one that we do, because we've done the 4, and having this one, we can get the full-length versions of the 4. We can put 2 on each side of an LP. So we can get those 4 on one LP, and then we'll put this one as a second LP. So it'll be like a double LP. And then, I don't know, we'll probably do some really cool packaging of some sort about our time with the Stooges and all that kind of. Maybe we'll really turn it into some sort of final tribute of some kind. But I don't think we don't want to do any more. We've done 5. I think we've proven the point.
Yeah.
Now
you spent so much time with Iggy and played in the final version of Stooges. Looking back on those, especially that last era of Stooges, what stands out to you in that period is how do you want people to remember that chapter of the Stooges history?
I don't know. I mean, I met Scott back in 1990 when I first started playing with Iggy, and the first tour I did with Iggy, we went through Detroit, and there was the manager had told me, look, the Ashtons are coming to the show. And so I was super nervous, being a huge fan and everything. I was really nervous. And then, so it turns out they actually came to the sound check. They were in the venue. I didn't see them, but they had watched our sound check. And then there was a bar just right next door to the venue. And so after the sound check, the manager said, oh, the Ashtons are next door in the bar and they really want to meet you. I'm like, oh my God, oh wow. So I went over there and I went in the bar and I didn't see anybody. And so I just immediately went up to get a beer, and just sort of try to figure out where they are. And while I was standing there ordering a beer, this hand landed on my shoulder. And I turned around and Scott was he's a bit taller than me. And there was Scott with his hand on my shoulder, the leather jacket and the whole thing. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to die. He looked so tough, and I thought, oh God. And he goes, we're sitting back here at the table back there. Get your beer and come join us. And I'm like, oh man. So I got my beer and I went back there and sat with them. And those guys were fantastic. They just sort of like put their arms around me and they were like, welcome to the family kind of thing, like really, really cool, and really got rid of my nervousness completely, so over the years, they would always come to shows and I would see them. And so they were cool, and then when finally the reunion got going, one of the first shows, definitely maybe the second or third show that they did was outside of Paris on this racetrack, and I knew Iggy's French promoter really well, and of course he wanted to get in on that and like book them, but they wanted a lot of money at first. They were really asking for an astronomical amount of money, and so I knew that at first he was super pissed off, I worked with him for 30 years, and they do, but then he suddenly got wind of this. It was a biker convention, a massive, maybe one of the biggest ones in Europe, but a huge biker convention for a weekend on this giant racetrack outside of Paris with bands, but also with racing and all this kind of stuff and food. It's a huge whole weekend festival. And they had the money. And they wanted the Stooges. So it was just a coincidence. I was in Paris working on something with somebody, and there was a band in Paris that I knew that were friends of mine. They got booked to open the show. And so the guy who owned the record, Bertrand Bergala, who owned the label, and he said, look, my band is opening up for the Stooges. We got to go down there and see the show. And I thought, oh, I'm not sure if I want to see this or not. I'm not sure if it's going to be good. I just don't know. I don't want to have my
memories dashed.
Yeah, I don't. Sometimes it can be. This doesn't work out well. And I'm like, I have a certain image of that band in my mind as a teenager. Like I don't want to mess it up. And so I was saying, no, I'm not going to go. I don't want to go. And he's like, you have to go. You have to go. You have to go. So finally I went down there with him, and I said, look, let's go down. We'll watch the Dragons open up. But after that, I want to go because I got funny feelings about it. And anyway, our car got blocked in. We couldn't get out. And so I was stuck there. So I knew the sound man, Max, and so I just went to the sound booth, and I thought, well, I may as well just like saddle up here and like watch it and just see how it is what it is, And at least I got a good place to stand here. And man, they came on and it was like dynamite. They blew my head off. They were as soon as Ron turned on and started playing, you realize, oh my God, that's the sound. That's the sound of that album. And it's like, wow, Mike was great. Anyway, they were fantastic. They just kicked ass. And I'm like, oh. So I went backstage afterwards, Iggy had taken off, of course, right away. And so they were all hanging out. So I went, and I'm like, man, I saw it. And I was talking with Ron, and I'm like, Ron, it was so good. I was so happy to finally see you play, and it just so far beyond my expectations. I never dreamed it would be like that level of incredible, And he was like, what did he say? He said, I waited. He said, well, I waited, let's see, so 73, 2003, something like that. He's like, I've been waiting 32 years to play that gig. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and I knew he's telling the truth. He really waited 32 years to play that gig. And I'm like, I'm really sorry that I contributed 9 years at that point. I'd contributed 9 years to those 32 years, But, man, they killed it. They were so good, and Scott was in great shape, and they just were awesome. So, when Scott had his stroke, they just said that I had to come in and fill in for him and take over. There was always this hope that he would come back. It's only going to be temporary. I'm going to do a week or 2 weeks or something like that. And then it went on for 3 years. And he never came back. But
did he see any shows?
No. I know he saw some on film, because there were some shows that were filmed. And I know that everyone wanted him to come back. And Iggy really put some energy into trying to get him motivated to come back. Like, I think they actually did a rehearsal together and stuff like that. But his stroke, I think he just lost a lot of muscle. He lost a lot of muscle after that, and he just couldn't get his stamina back, because the shows are super full on exhausting, it's run for your life situation, those shows. And if you're compromised, it's just, So
those songs just, they seem simple, but I'm sure it's deceptively simple.
Yeah, say a song like 1970, which Mike and I did a version of that. And that song, I played it in the past with Iggy, but I never realized like how intense of a drumming situation that song is. It's just like a 2-bar pattern. It's totally furious the whole time. It's absolutely playing as hard as you can the whole time, but it's this revolving 2-bar pattern that goes on forever. And you start to lose your mind. You start hallucinating and losing, things are spinning around, and you can really, when you play that thing for 9 minutes or something, again, stuff starts to happen in your mind. And it's pretty intense to maintain the focus and maintain this rigid, hard pattern, like sharp pattern like that, and never let it, let up. Really tough.
Yeah, and he did it hungover.
Possibly so. Yeah, possibly so at times. It wouldn't have been easy to play in that band hungover. That's a serious business playing those songs. And you better be physically ready to run.
What sort of preparation did you have to have for these gigs? I mean, they're so energy consuming.
I don't know. A lot. I would do some stretches and things like that. But prior to those gigs, a lot of the times I just sat in a room with Iggy getting ready. I just didn't do anything. Like he was, whatever, concentrating, or like we just wouldn't talk. We'd just be silent and be in the same room and just sort of like, I don't know, channeling. He's metamorphosing into what he's going to be, which is something else. It's something else, and he's turning into that, and so you can't talk. And I don't know, we just concentrate and sort of bottle up energy.
How different is Iggy on stage from normal life?
Completely different. It's like black and white, A and B. Like that stage, when he's on stage, he's from another world. He's in another dimension. He's another thing, and when he's off, he's not that anymore. Mm-hmm. He's just a nice guy. He's smart and funny and witty and clever and good sense of humor. And he's been all over the world. He's got lots of stories, and he's very interesting. But on stage, there's this beast, this thing, this whatever spirit or whatever inhabits him about an hour or two before the show. And then, yeah. But I know a lot of singers that are like that. A lot of opera singers are like that too. They go through a metamorphosis about an hour before going on stage, and when they go on stage, they are something else, and they are working with energy that is not there otherwise. It's like something with adrenaline, and the great singers, they can conjure up this other world that they go into, and then they come on stage and they are, that's what everybody wants to see. They want to see that,
It's interesting you say the opera singers, because they are actually playing a character.
Yeah.
But I guess that's not too different. I mean, you work with a lot of big personalities: Iggy, Nick Cave, Michael Gira. I guess that's common.
They're the same. They all transmorph into some other world, some other thing, and that's where what of seeing them on stage, that's where that thing exists. It's there. It's not there when they're not on stage. There's something else. Generally much more light and pleasant and relaxed most of the time, and it's just when that show time is coming, there's this world that they go into. The only person I saw that really didn't do that, some years ago, I worked with Brian Ferry when we did Babylon Berlin, the German TV series, and Brian sings we're on camera, and Brian in the show, Brian is the lead singer in my big band. He's my guest singer, and I'm like this sort of Gene Krupa type character who's got this big band, and it's set in 1927, and so Brian, so we were filming for maybe 5 days, all day every day, shooting the songs, and so we're on camera for a bit, and then it's like sitting around for an hour and a half, and so Brian, I had this really elaborate 1920 sort of Duke Ellington drum set, of all this stuff that I have, and Brian is really into that stuff. He's totally obsessed with 1920s jazz, big band jazz. He knows all the history of who played with who and who went that way and who went that way, who came from there, and he really knows his history. And so he was totally mesmerized by this gear that I had. And it's like, and I told him, yeah, this is all my stuff. So we got to talking a lot. And so he just wanted to talk about big band, Duke Ellington, the Ellingtonians, and everybody. And so we were having a great time talking. We're like going down bunny rabbit holes talking about, did you know this woman that sang on, and she also, we just totally in another zone. And all of a sudden the director would be like, okay, on set, and then suddenly there would be the snap, and it would be like action, and Brian he could like snap his fingers and immediately be that thing. Like he could turn it on and off like pushing a button. And I mean, I saw him like, I didn't see what was coming out on the camera. Later I see it, and it's Brian Ferry being Brian Ferry, singing like, it's backing track and everything on the camera. But he's singing, and it looks complete like that's Brian Ferry doing his thing. But as soon as, okay, cut, and they'd stop, and he would turn around, and we'd get right back to talking immediately about whatever, some saxophone player or something that he, like he was, and we'd go back and forth, and he would just turn around and snap into this character. Like, that was very impressive. I'm like, wow, he's got control of it,
There's this film clip of Leonardo DiCaprio doing that, The Wolf of Wall Street, and he's just socializing, and then all of a sudden, I think Scorsese says, "All right, we're getting ready," and you see him kind of fold into himself, and then he just burst out, just kind of being that character in the movie.
Yeah, like most of the singers I know, it takes them an hour or something to sort of slowly morph into that thing. So to just be able to just snap right into it in no time is like, I don't know how they can do that. That's really incredible. But they definitely go into they're in another zone, another world,
I like watching Iggy's videos with his bird. That seems very aligned with the person I see on stage. The person I see on stage is just the music's moving through them. But it's the same person with the bird, the same humor, the same kind of energy. It's just different set.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's always been into birds because when you see like a lot of his dances, like his state when he's in that zone, and he's got these weird dances that he did that he used to do, right? And a lot of them, I don't know if you've ever seen footage of like Birds of Paradise. Those birds of paradise. So there's lots of different breeds of these birds, but they, they're like in Borneo and like, they're in jungles and stuff like. So the male birds, when they mate, like the female birds are not very. They're just like brown feathers. They're not really ornate or very fancy looking or anything. They just look like a bird. And but the males, the different breeds, they have all these outrageously elaborate colored feathers. Yeah, the plumage, really ultra exotic, right? And they compete against each other to win over a female bird. And they have these ceremonies, these sort of where they dance. They have dances. You got to see that stuff. But I remember seeing footage of these birds, and I was like, God, like half those dances are Iggy's dances. I don't know if he saw that or studied that and just took it, or if he's somehow connected in that stuff. But a lot of his moves are exactly like these Birds of Paradise dances, the mating dances. Because they do all these crazy things where they snap their feathers out. It's almost flamenco-looking stuff, and then they move around and do this funny thing, and it's all just like what he does on stage. I'm like, what is that connection? I don't know, but it's something from birds. And so when he got the parrot or the cockatoo, I was like, oh yeah,
of course,
he's into it,
Who? I've seen Iggy a few times. Who is the guy? I think it's like a bodyguard of some sort. He manages the crowd around Ig when he's on stage. He'll invite crowds up to dance, but the one guy protects him from that.
His name is Josh Grain. And he worked with Iggy for a very, very long time. I think since '86 or something like that. Very, very long, devoted, close.
He is tough. He accepts no fuckery.
I know firsthand. He was my drum tech for 12 years. Yeah, he's an incredible guy, and yeah, we had quite a dramatic meeting in how we met, but it all worked out fine later, and yeah.
Is that the guy that came out and found you in the crowd?
Yes.
The Iggy. Oh, okay.
That is him. And in those days, he was wearing an old like a 1940s American policeman cap. The big, he had one of those on. It was really all muscle and, oh my God. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. We'll have you back on to tell the long story. When you were doing the final spate of Stooges shows,
Yeah.
did you know that was the end of the road?
No, we didn't. We had no idea. And my heart really got broken when it all shut down, because I'd spent 9 years touring with Iggy, and so I knew him. We were very, very close, and I was devoted to him for 9 years every day. And when we went into the Stooges, when I got into the Stooges thing, it was a completely different dynamic than anything we'd ever had before. Because I knew Mike, but I'd never met James Williamson before, or Steve, and it's like that. It was really like a family. It was really like family. Even though I'd known Scott and Ron and they were gone, but it was still had this energy of like this really tight family. Of course, they had their baggage from going back to the 60s in Detroit, but it took a while for James to accept me and warm up to me, because he knew I was Iggy's guy. But once he realized that the history that I'd had and all the stories I knew with Scott and Ron, and we had this unique bonding of all of us, and it was very, very tight, and it was really cool. And those guys were so funny, just the stories, and it was just so great just traveling from A to B with those guys. Like, the show's one thing, but okay, we're going to spend 6 hours getting from there to there, and it's just hanging out with them all day long was just the best, And it got better and better and better as the years went by, largely due to James getting in better shape. Like, he really, really tried to step up, because Mike and I were really tight, and we knew the songs, and we were ready to kick ass, with Iggy. And James had to really get his playing, back up to where he had been in the past, and he really worked hard on it and got good. And so once we really got it all tight, it was a mean show. We had a mean show going on, and we were loud and tight, and Iggy was still able to, cause some real chaos, and it was just awesome. And I was so excited to do anything with them, just to spend time with everybody, go out to dinner and talk and eat and drink together and stuff. It was just the best, the coolest band ever in my life. And when Steve died, I was just destroyed, because I knew, oddly enough, like, Steve was a crucial part of an immensely crucial part of the whole sound of the band. And I know Iggy talked about that too in interviews, that the thing that set the Stooges apart from the other bands at that time, all the Detroit bands, but all the hard acid rock psychedelic bands, the thing that set them apart was Steve, because Steve was such a killer tenor saxophone player, and he had that John Coltrane sound. He had the embouchure, he had the tone, and it sounded good. He was a great saxophone player. So it gave them this free jazz, kind of a little bit of John Coltrane free jazz, but with a really qualified player. He wasn't bullshitting. He was really good. So it gave them a certain status. They were taken seriously with Steve, and so. In the reunion shows, Steve was there, so they definitely focused. Iggy was focusing on using Steve a lot, pushing these long solos and stuff, because Steve could wail, he could really go wild, in the right way. Eric Dolphy world, John Coltrane world. And that was the thing. And when he died, I just knew it's over. There's no way we can do that without him, and you can't replace him. That's impossible. Yeah. So that was the end of it. And so I knew. I mean, I wasn't so upset about it being over, but I was really upset about Steve just not being alive anymore. Yeah, and so I mean, it had to stop. So.
Yeah. So that show in San Jose. That last one.
Were you there?
No. I wish I was.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah, that was the last one.
And then, but you guys didn't make a decision at that point.
No, Steve was alive, and he was alive and well. That after, I have pictures of him from in the backstage, in the room. It's on the cover of, I think it's Funhouse, the 7-inch that Mike and I did. There's a photo of a green shoe.
Yeah.
That's Steve's shoe.
Oh. Okay.
My girlfriend at the time, she was taking lots of pictures, and she took pictures. She took a bunch of weird pictures of his saxophone, which was amazing. He had the original saxophone that he originally learned with. We kept it all his life, so it was worth a fortune. It was a very old, beautiful, old saxophone, but over the years, it had gone green. It was like it was brass, right? So it had gone green discolored and cakey, and it really looked rotten, the saxophone. It sounded fantastic. It was like an incredible instrument. But Steve used to joke, because he was a chronic smoker. He's a real serious smoker right up until the day he died, and he so he had that smoker's cough and everything. He was you could hear him from the other side of a hotel, coughing, in the morning. But he would always joke with people. They're like, "Oh my God, look at your saxophone! Oh my, like it looks awful." He's like, "That's what I look like on the inside." Those guys were so funny, they were totally into the Three Stooges anyway. I mean, they were all into jokes, and it was so much fun hanging out with them. But yeah, so the cover on that Funhouse record is like, the only people who would get it is people that knew Steve, because he always wore these green boots. Yeah. So that's his foot.
Well, Larry, I really enjoyed this conversation, and the stories. Stooges have such a dear place in my heart, and hearing all this perspective is phenomenal. I want to have you back on, because there's so much else we could talk about as well. But
we got to figure out. We got to track Mike Watt down.
We'll get him at some point.
We'll figure it out. But anyway, the record's coming out on Friday.
Yep.
I don't know. I hope and pray there are copies in Australia somehow. That would be amazing. But
yeah, I happen to know people, so I think I'll probably get mine. But I'll
maybe I can bring some. Maybe I can bring some down with me if I can get them. Somehow I have to get copies too. But
there's only 500.
No, I think it's 1,000.
Is it 1,000? Okay, I saw it listed as 500. Okay.
I think the press release said. I think he said. Maybe it's 500 gold and 500 black. Okay. I don't know, but I think he's doing 1,000. So
that's not a lot for a global release. So that's why.
Well, it's not exactly number one type material.
But here's the thing:
it's a pretty abstract, strange. It's not going to get a lot of radio airplay, if you know what I mean.
I agree with you. It's hard to dance to, but
it's not a good dance track.
Record nerds love Stooges. They know your work. They know Watt's work. You guys have stamps of approval. So I'm sure people are going to be looking to grab that one if they can find one. So that's what I'm here to do. Encourage people, when you walk into those independent record stores on Record Store Day, find this record, because there aren't that many.
Yeah, we tried pushing the boundaries on every one of these 7 inches. Like, there's just people, no one's expecting something like that. And but this one is the furthest, I think, that we pushed. It's like, okay, here we go.
Phenomenal. All right, Larry, well, you take care. We'll see you in Sydney, mate.
I'll see you in Sydney.
Oh, hey, real quick. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
I don't know what kind of, you can send me an email or whatever like that.
Yeah, what's your email?
It's DAMMIT, like damn it.
Like Toby.
Yeah, Central, CENTRAL, with an E at the end. So it's like damn it Centrala. Damn it Central.
Okay.
At gmail.com.
Okay, all right. I'll take a look, see if I can find Mr. Liebeck as well.
Check him out. He's in your backyard.
Could be quite literally.
Maybe you should do an interview with him. I mean, he is like I said, I think his family, his roots are Norwegian, but he grew up in Australia. He's an Australian film composer icon. He's like the greatest one that I know of from Australia.
Okay. I'll reach out to some people who would likely know where to find him if we can find him.
Yeah, you can probably get his whole discography on Discogs or something, and then you're bound to recognize some things.
Okay. The Australian Suite. That's going to be in my player on my next plane ride.
Well, cool, right, man. Maybe I'll see you in Sydney then. That would be fun.
And yeah, I'll take you to all the good record shops if you want.
Stay in touch, and let's get Mike Watt in the corral.
We'll get him. Okay, man.
Yep.
Cheerio. Lovely man, that Larry Mullins, and I'm going to have him back. There's so much more we can cover, and we will have him back very soon, I hope. Again, We Will Fall, Larry Mullins and Mike Watt, Record Store Day release, only 1,000 worldwide, so grab a copy if you see it on Record Store Day. And that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to everyone who's leaving positive reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And of course, those of you who are sharing it on social media. And a big super smooch to everyone who's supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. Help support the show. I put extras up there. And of course, you get the warm, fuzzy feeling of helping keep this show going. We'll be back very shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, you all behave yourselves, and thanks again for listening to the Vinyl Guide podcast. Cheers.